Okay, I'm gonna try to get, I think this is part 4, I think. I'm gonna do at least one of these. I'm not sure if I'm gonna do more today or not. I don't know. Anyway. Beginning the Archduke Candidate course. Once our discussion with Herscher was over, the room began to clear. I stayed put, however. I still wished to speak with Roderick, and to that end, I took a sound-blocking magic tool from Riarda. Only once Roderick was gripping the tool did our conversation begin. Roderick, you said that you might know what caused you to become Omni-Elemental, correct? I understood when Professor Herscher and that said that we were all connected to you. It's the name swearing. He brought a hand to his chest, and his eyes grew distant as he seemed to remember the ritual. When I gave you my name, I was bound by your mana. I could tell in an instant that it could spare me, but that it could just as easily take my life as well. Thus, I imagine your mana had an influence on my divine protection ritual. You are Omni-Elemental yourself, I expect. I nodded. Roderick already looked so confident in his deduction that I saw no reason to lie to him. This certainly does seem to be because of me, I wonder. Does that mean those who gave their names to Ferdinand and Lady Georgine likewise gained elements through them? Thinking back, I did notice that brewing became easier. It was only by the slightest amount, though, so slight that at the time I merely assumed I was having a good day. I expect that knights, such as Laird Eckert, feel the effects more keenly as they use the mana of their lord or lady to do battle. But now, receiving divine protection from the primary gods had reduced Roderick's mana expenditure by a noticeable degree. Still, I would assume that those who gave their names to Lord Ferdinand and Lady Georgine were less affected, as they gave their names after the ritual, Roderick continued. Furthermore, and this is just my opinion, I do not think it wise to reveal that giving one's name can lead to obtaining more elements. And why is that? Name swearing is a ritual wherein one proves their loyalty by offering their life to another. I do not believe it should be done to seek more elements, Roderick said, his voice almost a whisper. He had abandoned everything, even his family, to serve me. It made sense that he didn't want his resolve to be wrongly interpreted as a self-centered attempt to secure more elements. I nodded slowly. I would not want to accept the life of someone who simply wants my elements. However, the children of the former Veronica faction are currently being forced to give their names to survive. That is not normal. Indeed. And among those who must give their names to survive, there are surely some who would wish to give their names to you solely to increase their elements. I assume this is not something that you would appreciate. I was set on accepting the names of the former people who had chosen me after careful consideration, but he was right. I didn't want to deal with anyone who was coming to me for the elements. My greatest fear is that if you publicize this information, the children of the former Veronica faction will earn even more ire from other nobles, and the cries for them to be deemed guilty by association will grow even louder. Having to swear one's name becomes less of a punishment when it provides the chance to earn new elements while serving the archducal family. The majority of the former Veronica faction were lay nobles and men nobles. Some of the men nobles might as well have been arch nobles thanks to their Arensbach blood, but they only had one to three affinities. This name swearing would allow them to have as many elements as the archducal family, and upon swearing their names, they would also be in a position to learn my mana compression method. This surely wouldn't please other nobles. Even so, this is going to be difficult to hide with so many children offering their names at once, I said. I will need to consult the Ob. Roderick, the professors already know you have become Omni-Elemental, but take care not to inform anyone else. I continued to pass all my written and practical lessons the first time around as the weekend drew nearer and nearer. Each time I went to the auditorium or the small hall, I would see other students point at me and murmur things to the effect of, I heard she performed a large-scale blessing while playing the harpspiel, and it was a larger blessing than I'd ever seen before. So many people had witnessed my blessing that it was pointless for me to try to deny it. Instead, my only choice was to wait patiently until they eventually stopped talking about it. I wrote a letter to Clarissa requesting a meeting and sent a report to Ehrenfest to give Herscher an opportunity for her discussion with Sylvester. I also wrote a letter to Ferdinand, but I kept missing my chance to give it to Raymond, who was largely holed up in his dormitory. Come the first Earth Day, the first years who had all obtained their staffs hid away in their rooms, while the other students started going to the gathering spot to secure materials for their various classes. Normally we would have started gathering soon after arriving at the dormitory, but the purge had understandably delayed those of us in our second and third years. The quantity of herbs decreased considerably, so I went ahead and dumped some of my mana to replenish it, in part to prevent another unwanted blessing in the future, and that should do it. Thus time passed without incident, and the next week arrived. I would soon be attending the first class of my specialty courses, and with that thought in mind, I made my way to the dining hall for breakfast. Roderick was the only one waiting for me on the second floor. Theodore was not present. He must not have finished absorbing his divine will. I am sure he will be out by the afternoon. This wasn't much of a surprise. Everyone absorbed their divine wills at their own pace. As I peeked down the hallway leading to the boys' rooms, I envisioned Theodore working hard, hoping to turn his staff into a weapon as soon as possible, and silently cheered him on. After breakfast, everyone gathered to study in the common room. This would continue until all of our written lessons were over. The first and second years had managed to finish all their classes in the first week, since they had so few to begin with, which meant they were this year's fastest teams. Charlotte was especially relieved about this, as she felt that she had now made up for her shortcomings last year. Now the third year and above were in a tense battle to secure the highest marks in their respective specialty courses. The attendant team was especially motivated. I'll do my best too. I see the Archduke candidate course does not have its own specialty building, I said. Knights, attendants, and scholars all got their own buildings, so why didn't we? It was actually a little upsetting. Riarda chuckled when she saw me purse my lips. The central building is a specialty building for royals and Archduke candidates. There is a classroom in a corner of the building for them. It was designed this way so that those with the most status would not have to travel as far as the students. That worked in my favor. I would have been in trouble if our classroom was too far away. And so I made my way to the room that had been indicated in the advancement ceremony. Now then, study well, Riarda said. I do not expect any issues, I replied. I studied with Ferdinand after all. I am not so confident, Wilfrid mumbled. I couldn't keep up with you and Uncle. There was no helping that, though. He naturally wasn't able to visit the temple every day, and his smaller mana quantity meant he was inevitably slower at dyeing face stones. But you still prepared, and you have so many divine protections now. I'm sure you will find class much easier than the studies. Hopefully. I entered the classroom with Wilfrid and immediately saw that, unlike the small hall, there was a number of rather low desks lined up. If our lessons with Ferdinand were anything to go by, this was probably so that we could peer down when making our practice box gardens, though they're still a bit too tall for me. Oh, I'd probably need a stand or something. After a quick glance around the room, I noticed that there was already one at the desk closest to the professor's podium. That was sure to be for me. Of course, someone as astute as Lady Eglantine would come prepared, though I do feel a bit awkward about being the only one using a stand at their desk. I sighed and looked around again. Our classes thus far had all been shared with archnobles, but there were only other Archduke candidates here, and not very many at that. Thinking about how alone we were going to be from now on made me feel very sad. Lady Hannelore, how do you do? Lady Rosamine, Lord Wilfrid, how are you? I promptly made my way over to Hannelore. As I understood it, Hersher had spoken to her about her divine protections over the weekend. I was curious to know exactly what she had said. I'm told that Professor Hersher went to question Dunkelfelger, but how did you fare, Lady Hannelore? She tends to lose sight of everything else when her research is involved, so I was a little concerned. She said that she wished to test your theory was true, Lady Rosamond. I was ever so curious about why I received divine protections from various subordinates, but the theory explained everything. I feel very relieved now, Hannelore said happily. So you were praying on a daily basis. Well, I kept thinking about how much I wanted to receive Dragoner's divine protection, and I prayed often while keeping the charms that Cordula gave me on my person at all times. She pulled up her sleeve to reveal a bracelet-shaped charm just like the ones I was wearing. It was set with a somewhat larger than normal face stone marked with Dragoner's sigil. In that case, have you also been praying to Ongrif on a daily basis, I asked? As for him, I do not think I prayed to him often, but Dunkelfelger's culture is to praise the art of war. We often sing and dance before dinner matches, and upon emerging victorious, we hold ceremonies wherein we dedicate our mana to the fighting-type gods. After we won the introductory tournament, both my brother and I offered up our mana. Given that my brother also received Ongrif's divine protection, it seems likely that the ritual is responsible. Singing and dancing before a match, huh? That sounds a lot like those hakas you see at rugby games. Well, makes sense to me. That explained why Dunkelfelger alone received divine protection from the fighting-type subordinate gods. They prayed before and after dinner mat games and put so much soul into those acts of devotion. So it only made sense that their faith would be rewarded. We theorized the apprentice knights earned their divine protections because Professor Roffin incorporates the traditions into the apprentice knight course. Those who participate earnestly receive them, Hannelore continued. Those who spoke the prayers or sang war songs simply because they were being told to apparently didn't receive any such protections. Lord Wilfrid must have received so many because he prays a tremendous amount each day. Seems like having our Archduke candidates travel around the duchy for spring prayer to help with the mana shortage was the right decision after all, Wilfrid said. Hannelore nodded with a smile, then looked at me as if suddenly remembering something. In that case, how many divine protections did you receive, Lady Rosamond? She asked, now coming across as a lot more timid. You pray on a daily basis as the High Bishop, so it must have been an extraordinary number, and the ritual made your mana overflow to the point that you gave a blessing during music class, no? Well, that's... Oh boy, what are you going to tell her? I would say half. I would say like around the same amount as Wilfried. That's what I would say. Because then it won't be as big a deal and nobody would ever know. Because, I mean, how are they going to know? Every Archduke candidate in the room was now watching me, so they must have been listening in on our conversation. Even I understood that being stupidly honest and revealing the actual number here would just cause problems. The precise number is a secret, I replied, because it's not something to be made so public. Handler looked around at everyone, nodded, and said, "So you received so many that you cannot even say." All of a sudden, everyone jumped and rushed to their seats. Eglantine, our professor, had entered with her many assistants that were carrying large boxes. I went to the front row seat where the stand was already in position. Wilfried was sitting some distance away, but in a pleasant turn of events, Handler was right beside me. "We've been put next to each other, Lady Rosemine. Indeed, it's a fine day for learning." Eglantine, who was now standing behind the professor's podium, was wearing her hair in a very complex style. She was also dressed in clothes that emphasized that while she was our teacher, she was a royal first and foremost. Her black cape made her current position especially clear. And she became a teacher to gather intelligence from me. My heart sank a little as I recalled Hersher's words. It was sad enough that they wanted to probe me for information, but what was even sadder was that their suspicions were entirely warranted. I did have information that could interest the royal family. The Bible contained instructions on how to become king, but revealing this would put me and many others in danger, so I had no intention of doing so. "It is good to see everyone again," Eglantine said. "I may now be your professor instead of a fellow student, but I am still glad to have this time with you all." Even when I was feeling so blue, Eglantine looked as pretty as ever. She wore a captivating smile and moved with elegant steps as though performing a dance. After giving the usual lengthy noble greetings, she explained why she had been chosen to replace the older woman from the royal branch family that had previously led their course. She had come first in class among the other Archduke candidates in her year, and the king had apparently deemed her the best suited to lead the future generations of students. "Now that I have received this duty, I intend to do everything in my power to make you all proper Archduke candidates," Eglantine concluded. She then looked to her assistants, who began distributing the boxes they had carried in a short while before. Once everyone had a box, the assistants briskly exited the room, presumably so that they wouldn't learn the contents of our lesson. I recalled Ferdinand forbidding anyone but the Archduke candidates from attending his study sessions. "Think of this as a more basic form of the foundational magic," Eglantine said, making everyone look at the box in front of them. Looking at it from the top, it was a square about 60 centimeters wide, full of dry-looking sand that reminded me of a desert. At the very center was a magic tool about 10 centimeters in diameter, lined with marble-sized face stones of various colors. This is pretty big. It was about twice as large as the one we had used in our studies with Ferdinand. As I examined it for any other differences, the lecture began. "Over the span of the third-year Archduke candidate course, you will learn how to control the foundational magic," Eglantine said. "We are each going to form a city in our sandbox, then practice using a simplified version of the foundational magic." It was the same thing that Ferdinand had gotten us to do. Which is good, obviously. I will be pretty confused if our class covered something else entirely. "This box represents your duchy, and the magic tool in the center is a mock version of the foundational magic," Eglantine continued with a smile. "The dry sand was what one got when the ground ran out of mana, but by feeding it with our own mana, we could produce fertile earth. First, take out your staffs and dye your duchy with your mana." We formed our staffs as instructed, then there was no better tool than for modulating mana. I then channeled my mana into the very tip and touched it against one of the face stones. Although there was quite a few face stones on the magic tool, they were all connected, so you could dye them all at once by channeling more mana into just one. Okay, What? I was channeling my mana like I always did when dyeing something, but then I noticed that the magic tool wasn't the only thing being affected. The entire garden was changing before my very eyes. Despite even my most frantic attempts, there was nothing I could do to stop my mana now that it was flowing. It kept dripping out of me like water from a broken faucet. Oh no, what should I do? The staff isn't doing its job. I can't modulate my mana at all. "Oh my, I was aware of the rumors, but you truly are skilled, Lady Rosemont." "I'm not doing this on purpose." "Lady Eglantine, that is Professor Eglantine to you." "Still, to think you would dye not only the magic tool, but the entire garden in so short a time." In the blink of an eye, the once desert-esque contents of my box had turned into black earth from which sprouts had started to grow. And as the mana was continuing to flow out of me, the amount of greenery was steadily increasing. Eglantine was watching all this with an amused smile, her orange eyes sparkling as she remarked that even after hearing the rumors about me, she was still surprised to be seeing this in the flesh. It just made me want to cry. "Don't look so moved, Eglantine. I'm a problem child who can't even manage her mana right." Eglantine tilted her head, still watching my newly made garden. Oh, whatever shall I do? My plan for today's lesson was to have everyone dye their foundation and then fill their duchy with mana, but it seems you're already almost done. Would you like to progress to the next step, or will you keep pace with the others and wait until the next lesson? I paused for a moment and then said, I would like to finish the class sooner. I need to practice my mana control after this, and in any case, I cannot leave until class ends and my retainers come to get me. I was given the next steps, which were to draw the necessary blueprints for making the border barrier and gates, and to prepare the golden powder needed for Entwicombe. In the next class, I will teach you the names of the god of darkness and the goddess of light, Eglantine said. That will open many avenues for you. Right. Ferdinand had not yet taught me their names, and since the spells I used referred to them only as the god of darkness and the goddess of light, anything I made with Entwicombe fell apart after about 5 minutes. Surely the world could understand the profound despair I had felt upon seeing a model of my dream library crumble away before my very eyes. Poor thing. Incidentally, when I had tried to mourn the loss of my library, Ferdinand had scolded me for wasting time and forbidden me from making another one. My next course of action had been to create my room and fill it with bookshelves, which I had made him yell at me again, saying I might as well have made another library. Those thoughts of the past floated through my mind as I completed my work. Channeling mana into face stones and turning them into gold dust is easy peasy. As I gripped the face stones given to me and turned them into gold dust one by one, Handler, who was pressing her stab against the magic tool in her box, looked over in shock. It certainly seems easy for you to turn face stones to dust, Lady Rosemine. Right now, it's easier for me to blast my mana at things indiscriminately. Between you and me, I reduced my voice to a whisper. The Divine Protections ritual has left me completely unable to restrain my mana. Anything I do runs the risk of turning into a blessing. She widened her eyes, then giggled in amusement. Oh my, if you were to give a blessing here like you did in music class, and everyone's gardens might end up dyed with her mana. That's not good! I'm taking care to ensure that does not happen. In practice, I ended up becoming Schwartz & Weiss's owner through a blessing. Were I to give a blessing right here and now, it was possible that I might overwrite someone else's boxes and make them my own. I couldn't risk that happening. Handler's eyes widened for a moment while then she gave me a small troubled smile. I was speaking in jest, but I suppose it could actually be possible for you, Lady Rosemine. Oh no! Oh, I too was merely speaking in jest, I said, mentoring a smile while turning one face stone after another into dust. I was desperately hoping she would believe me. Okay, she doesn't believe me. She's completely unnerved. As I floundered in place, wishing that someone would save me, I heard Wilfried speak up from somewhere behind me. Professor Eglantine, I finished dyeing my magic tool as well, he said in a bright voice. The Divine Protections really have made my mana easier to use, and less costly, too. I turned around, my eyes brimming with tears, and saw Wilfried proudly showing off the garden he had made while Eglantine praised him. He was the very image of an honor student who knew no struggles in life. Wilfried's got a bunch of Divine Protections, too. How come he isn't suffering for it? I think you've got too much mana, is the case. After venting my frustrations on him, I prayed from the bottom of my heart to the gods who had given me their divine protection. Oh gods, please don't let Hannelore say she doesn't want to be friends with me anymore. Okay, dedication whirling. 3rd year. I came out of my room and trudged downstairs in my panda bus, my shoulders slumped, still distraught that I had weirded out my precious bookworm friend. I had been asked to wait in the common room until lunch was prepared, and when I arrived, I found that Wilfried and Charlotte were already there reading books. Sister, Charlotte said, looking up when she heard my arrival, we have whirling practice this afternoon, which means we gotta spend a class together. Or get to spend the class together. I nodded in response, wearing a pleasant smile, but then the blood drained from my face. I had come to a terrifying realization. In my current state, it was clear as day that blessings would practically explode out of me the moment I started to perform a dedication whirl. Sorry. And considering that I had already committed such a tragic blunder during my morning classes, that would make Handler run away from me for sure. Anything but that. I need to rely on someone other than the gods. Wilfried, Charlotte, I can no longer control my mana and will almost certainly fire out one blessing after another during class, I said. By any chance, do you know how I might be able to avoid this? My 2 siblings and pretty much everyone else in the common room began to give me my questions some serious thought. As it turned out, those who received my blessings during class also started getting strange looks from the other students. This was now the entire dormitory's problem. Professor Hersher said you just might need to use up your mana, didn't she? Wilfried asked. I shook my head, having already racked my brain for some solutions. I expanded some of my mana at the gathering spot yesterday, but it accomplished nothing. Oh, right. I remember being surprised about that, but I see now that you were trying to dump your mana. Charlotte was next to speak, her indigo eyes sparkling, and wondered, you used that much mana and it still didn't change things, sister? Yeah, she's got a lot. Not in the slightest, Wilfried replied on my behalf. It helped so little that Rosemite ended up being the only one to almost finish the whole class this morning. She was absolutely mortified when this freaked out Lady Handler who was sitting right beside her. She even started taking her anger out on me, saying that it wasn't fair how little I've struggled, even though I got a bunch of divine protections too. Charlotte gave me a sympathetic look, then fell into thought. Could you not try using even more mana then? In fact, if you send a letter home saying that you wish to pour as much mana into face stones and magic tools as possible before afternoon classes, then you might even receive them by the time we finish eating. Her eyes flitted to the children of the former Veronica faction. As the Lord of Winter is due to appear soon, I am sure the Knight's Order would appreciate the assistance. I could tell that she wanted to add, plus Ehrenfest is doubtless short on mana due to the purge, but she had wisely stayed quiet. If you want to help out with the Lord of Winter hunt, how about sending herbs, Wilfried suggested. The ones in our gathering spot have more mana and elements because of you growing them with your mana, right? Couldn't you expend a ton of mana if we pick all the herbs, then you heal the spot over and over? That would not be of much use today, as that is too much for us to do in a single afternoon, but the idea is sound. Ehrenfest and I will both benefit. We were unable to come up with any other solutions, so I instructed Feline to pen an emergency letter to Ehrenfest and said, I received so many divine protections that I cannot control my mana, and almost likely explode with blessings during this afternoon's diverting class. Please send as empty face stones and magic tools you have, be they for the dedication ritual, the Lord of Winter hunt, or anything else. Roderick, I said, please send this to Ehrenfest, and then stress that it is urgent. I understood. I watched as Roderick briskly exited the room. Lady Rosemine, Judith said to me in a quiet voice, if you have so much mana to spare, could you fill my face stones too? Of course. And not just yours, Judith. Anyone who needs mana, step forward. To the common room, but most still seemed hesitant to accept the mana of an Archduke candidate. In the midst of all this, there came a light clinking noise as Lenore pulled out some face stones and magic tools from a bag on her hip. I would have filled these with mana then, she said. I used them up during training and was just about to need to refill them. I thank you ever so much, I said, then began to channel my mana into the items she had given me. Next to come forward was Alexis, one of the boys serving Wilfried as a guard knight. Oh my! He quite haltingly asked me whether his face stones would suffice as well. But of course I will accept stones from anyone, be it you, Natalie, Matthias, or Lorenz, I said, looking around the common room. The apprentice knights promptly raced to their rooms to fetch their face stones and magic tools, leaving behind the minimum number of guards necessary. The apprentice scholars and attendants followed right behind them. Milady, I cannot say I approve of you giving away your mana like this, Riarda said. I understand, but these are dire times, I replied, pursing my lips as I started to fill my guard knights' face stones. I wasn't being so charitable by choice either. Rather, I didn't want to be a ticking time bomb during class. Please and thank you. The face stones lined up before me varied in size from small to large. I pointed at several among them and said, there is a risk of smaller face stones like these being turned to gold dust, so take care. Those who wanted to keep using their small face stones hurriedly took them back, while some apprentice scholars actually put more forward, their eyes sparkling at the prospect of obtaining gold dust. Soon enough, the table in front of me was completely covered in face stones. I reached out and started filling them one by one. I thank you ever so much, Lady Rosemine. Those who received those newly filled stones did so with bright smiles, while others got to work gathering their fresh gold dust. It was then that the bell rang to signify that lunch was ready. I will finish the rest after eating, I announced, and that was precisely what I did. Even as I continued to work my way through the remaining face stones, all of my divine protections meant that I would barely feel any mana leaving me. Oh my god! She's got so much freaking mana, it's insane! How much must I use to be able to contain my blessings, I asked. None of us can answer that for you, I'm afraid. Not long after our meal, the first wave of empty face stones arrived from Ehrenfest. A second wave would apparently be sent at night. I got straight to work filling them with mana so that we could send them back. Many of these Sylvester had a surprising amount of my mana. Will this be enough, I wondered aloud? If you still end up letting out a blessing, then how about pretending to pass out and make a general mess of things so that people are too distracted to notice, Wilfried said. After getting a passing grade, I mean. Charlotte nodded. If we say that you simply wanted to bless everyone, even at the cost of depleting all your mana, then they won't know just how much mana you have. Lady Charlotte Brunhilde interjected. That may disguise her mana capacity, but will only cause legends about her sainthood to spread even faster. I would not want that, I agreed. Charlotte placed a troubled hand on her cheek. But it is too late to deny your sainthood any longer, is it not? You receive so many divine protections that you refuse to give us the precise number, and blessings seem to overflow from your every action, no matter your intentions. Our focus needs to be on how we can disguise your protections and control your image in the eyes of others. It is already widely known that you have plentiful mana and pray as often as you give blessings, so denying this sainthood outright is no longer an option. Of course, I wasn't actually a saint, but Charlotte was entirely in the right. We could talk about manipulating Rosemine's reputation later, Wilfred said. This afternoon's dedication whirling class comes first, and we don't have much time left. Rosemine, maybe you should wear all the charms that Uncle gave you to keep any blessings at bay, and plan around spilling as little mana as possible. I shall do just that, I replied, then hurry to my room. As well as all of my charms from Ferdinand, I also put on a necklace of several face stones strung together for good measure. To an unaware onlooker, it would seem that I wasn't wearing very many charms at all, but I was wearing a veritable suit of armor of them beneath my clothes. I should do it, I said upon my return. Wilfred, Charlotte, if worst comes to worst, drag me out of the small hall. As our class was going to be made up entirely of Archduke candidates, they were the only ones I could rely on. My siblings replied with firm, determined nods, while Riarda volunteered to stand at the ready outside the door. Picking ourselves up, Wilfred, Charlotte, and I entered the small hall. It was my first time feeling so tense after about whirling practice. Wilfred went over to Ortwin while Charlotte went to greet her own friend, Luzinde. I greeted Luzinde as well, and then looked around for one person in particular. There she is, Lady Hannelore. I had seriously weirded her out today. Whether it was safe for me to greet her was a point of serious concern. If she avoided me, I could see myself getting so depressed that I wouldn't want to leave my hidden room for days. All of a sudden, my eyes met Hannelore. She waved at me with a smile. She's not avoiding me. Oh, I'm so happy. Thank you, gods. Oh, no. I went to greet Hannelore, but Charlotte grabbed my sleeve to stop me. Sister, you seem a little excitable. Are you well? I'm quite fine. Right. Can't get excited. Hold it all in. I pressed a hand on my chest and took several deep breaths, which only made Luzinde peer at me with concern. Are you not feeling well today, Lady Rosemine? She asked. She's fine, but the dedication world always places a slight burden on her, Charlotte explained. For one, it involves exercise, which she naturally struggles with, but as the High Bishop, she also cannot help but pour extra effort into a dance for the gods. She sounded a little concerned, but her support was perfect. It was an excellent cover for if my dancing did produce a blessing, and it made it safe for me to pretend to pass out. That's my little sister for you. I showered Charlotte with praise on the inside, then noticed that Hannelore was coming our way. Her eyes were flitting all over in worry, most likely because Lestelot was accompanying her. Good day, Lady Rosemine, she said. Charlotte and Luzinde smoothly distanced themselves. This greeting alone had been enough for them to deduce that this was a personal matter. I smiled at the two Dunkelfelger students. Good day, Lady Hannelore, Lord Lestelot. Might you have business with me? When do you intend to hold the tea party between our two duchies? Lestelot asked rather bluntly. Depending on the quality of the hairpin, I may need to order another. I would rather it be done sooner rather than later. Was he insinuating that a hairpin from my darling Tully might not be enough? I could feel something inside of me about to snap, but then Hannelore put a hand on her cheek and shook her head. Brother, could you not simply be honest and say that you were looking forward to seeing how Ehrenfest's hairpin turns out, she said. I merely have a passing interest in what a backwater duchy such as Ehrenfest can produce. I would not say I am looking forward to anything. Did you not ask to come over here with me because you wanted to arrange a date for our tea party? Lady Rosemine always passes her classes the first time around, and as I recall, you wanted to make the most of these rare opportunities to speak with her. Lestelot turned his head away and gave an arrogant scoff as if denying the accusation entirely, while Hannelore continued doing her best to smooth things over. It was a question of whom I should trust, and the answer was simple. Hannelore was my friend. Lord Lestelot, I am glad that you were looking forward to seeing the hairpin, I said. However, as I also plan to take the scholar course this year, I will not have time to socialize in the near future. Perhaps we could review our schedules 10 days from now. We may be in a better position to make plans then. 10 days? Very well, Lestelot replied with a nod. Hannelore sighed, relieved that we had come to an agreement, and a soft smile rose on her face. It was a pleasant sight, and one that was tragically interrupted as another voice reached my ears. Oh my, you ordered a hairpin from Ehrenfest as well, Lord Lestelot? My fiancé is from Ehrenfest, so I have ordered from them as well. It was Tetlinde, forcing a very noble laugh as she made her way over. Even he doesn't like her. No, he might just be grimacing at the whole insinuation that he ordered it from Ehrenfest. Lestalot's lips twisted into a grimace. I wished only to confirm the best that a backwater duchy such as Ehrenfest can manage. Ah, is that so? But you still intend to gift yours to whomever you escort, no? Is this in the same way that I shall receive my own? Oh, right. I need to emphasize that Ferdinand had nothing to do with designing Detlinde's hairpin. Recalling one of my sacred duties, I quickly donned a smile. Lady Detlinde went all the way to Ehrenfest to socialize with her fiancé. There she chose the hairpins she desired. Your fiancé did not choose them for you? Lestalot asked, sounding a little dumbstruck. Detlinde's smile broadened. He will only be gifting them to me. I struggle to believe Lord Ferdinand's aesthetic sense in that is that poor, Lestalot muttered, looking between Detlinde and my hair stick. What exactly did you have him order for you? I have yet to receive them, so I cannot tell you how they look, Detlinde replied, emphasizing that they were gifts and not a purchase she had made for herself. She then shot me a look that seemed to say, explain. Lady Detlinde is due to be gifted 5 hairpins styled after Shintas flowers. They are all on the smaller side, but if you imagine Lady Adolphine's hairpin, then you should give you a good idea of their appearance. Most notable is how they form a gentle gradient from red to white. Handler blinked in surprise while Lestalot gave a look of exasperation. You ordered 5 hairpins just for your graduation ceremony, he asked. In other words, my fiancé is gifting me the most wondrous hairpins possible. Detlinde's red lips curved into an even wider grin. I cannot wait to see them. Didn't you already know you hadn't given them to her yet? Okay. In an annoying twist, Detlinde wasn't giving verbal confirmation that she had designed the hairpins herself. My only choice was to switch up my approach. The flowery designs themselves very much resembled Adolphine's hairpins, meaning they weren't at all unstylish. In other words, when it came time for Detlinde to put on her hairpins, we could just blame her for having decided to wear them all at once. The number may come as a surprise, I said, but none will go to waste. Each of is its own unique color, and the wearer can select which and how many to use when the time comes, to perfectly suit whatever atmosphere or dress is needed. I see, Lestalot murmured. Mixing and matching to create untold variety is rather clever. Detlinde puffed out her chest. Indeed, and it was I who suggested this system, I shall have you know. I am confident that Ehrenfest has met Lady Detlinde's requests perfectly. Her designs are truly splendid, I said, doing my best to prop her up. Detlinde nodded along with a satisfied smile. They are, aren't they? I certainly could not have entrusted it all to Ehrenfest craftspeople. Nobody knows what suits me better than I. It was Brunhilde and the others who came up with all this, but, well, whatever. I finally got Detlinde to admit that she designed them, and that's good enough for me. I must say I am looking forward to seeing those hairpins at our graduation, Lestalot said. Indeed, Detlinde replied. I am sure you will find yourself stunned, silent. Ho. I hate her. Freaking egotistical little girl. As we continued our conversation, the professors entered. Eglantine was among them. Lady Eglantine has offered to demonstrate whirling for us today, our whirling teacher announced. Watch carefully, everyone, no matter whether you are a junior or a senior. Lady Eglantine removed her black cape with a smile and gave it to a woman who was probably her attendant. She made her way to the circle in the center of the room, each step so graceful that one might have thought the dance had already begun, whereupon she knelt. After a moment of quiet, she shot her head up, then began to move like a leaf on the wind. Her slender arms stretched up toward the ceiling as though she were reaching for the distant heights. It's so pretty! You get to see her whirling again! I could not help but sigh in awe, watching with rapt attention as to not miss even a single second of Eglantine's whirling. Everything was perfect. The way her fingers sliced through the air, how her clothes swirled around her, a completely focused gaze, just watching her filled me with happiness. As I stood there enraptured, Detlinde heaved an exaggerated sigh. She was due to play the goddess of light during this year's graduation ceremony. I do not imagine she has any bad intentions, but I cannot approve of this overconfidence. Is whirling after one's graduation not akin to the goddess of chaos pushing forward the god of winter? Instead of complaining about Lady Eglantine's demonstration being unnecessary or arrogant, how about you watch carefully and try to learn from it? At this rate, Lord Lestalot's performance as the god of darkness will put you to shame. Ha. I would actually love to see that. Charlotte, who was watching the demonstration beside me, smiled at Detlinde. Professor Eglantine has already graduated by the time I joined the Royal Academy, so I am overjoyed to have this opportunity to witness her splendid whirling myself. Eglantine soon finished, at which point it was time for us to practice ourselves. The new students would only be watching, but the rest of us would be dancing with the others in our grades. As I was heading to the spot for third years, Eglantine smiled at me. Okay, she'll see, Detlinde is graduating this year, so she's a sixth year. Okay. Eglantine smiled at me. You performed such a tremendous whirl in your first year, Lady Rosamond. I cannot wait to see how much you have improved. I can already feel the weight of your expectations, Professor Eglantine, I replied. It was probably true that she was looking forward to seeing me perform, but since she truly did adore whirling as an art form, But it was equally likely that she wanted to extract as much information from me as she could. Otherwise, she wouldn't have come all this way to a class she had nothing to do with. No blessings, no blessings, no blessings! I made eye contact with Charlotte, who was watching by the wall. Her fingers were tightly intertwined and she looked noticeably tense. We exchanged nods. This is pretty nerve-wracking. I took a deep breath, then knelt. I needed to finish my dedication whirl without letting out a blessing. I am one who offers prayers and gratitude to the gods who have created the world, Handler began. She was leading the prayer as the highest-ranking Archduke candidate in our grade, and the rest of us needed to repeat after her. Of course, as I was being so cautious, I mouthed the words and nothing more. And now for the prayer pose. To me, whirling was a highly dangerous dance that came with the risk of an impromptu blessing. I honed my senses such that I could feel every nerve in my fingertips, and focused my mind to prevent even a single drop of my mana from slipping out. I could say with all confidence that I had never danced so seriously in my entire life. Even during the slow opening stages of the dance, my body grew hot and became covered in a sheen of sweat. The very act of breathing started to hurt a little. Giving into the blessing would have come as a wonderful release from my torment, but I couldn't risk standing out any more than I did. Already, I extended my hands and whirled, my hair spinning alongside my long sleeves. Just a bit more. The faster I whirled, the heavier my breathing became. I focused on keeping my balance and forced down the mana squirming within me as I turned into a boiling heat. My fingertips cut through the air for a short while longer, then I returned to kneeling. I could feel cold air stir against my cheeks and I was sweating heavily, but it was done. I hadn't let out a blessing. I'm assuming some still kind of leaked out, because, you were getting really hot, so I assume it could have leaked out. I win! I worked so hard and it all paid off! Someone praise me! But as I exhaled in relief, suddenly occurred to me. Something wasn't right. What the heck? My whole body is sparkling! The face stones I was wearing had all been filled with my mana, and they were now shining furiously as if to emphasize their presence. My bracelet, my necklace, every charm on me was emitting a dazzling light. I tumbled back onto my rear and tried to cover them with my hands, but there was nothing I could do. You can't even cover them all, because you only got 2 hands. Is this a good thing? A bad thing? Have I still made it? I gazed at Charlotte, unable to determine whether this was better or worse than a blessing. She paled and rushed over to me at once. Sister, just how much mana did you try to put into that blessing? Charlotte exclaimed, speaking much louder than was necessary. At this rate, you will fall unconscious again. I didn't give a blessing, though, right? I asked to double check. Charlotte shook her head. It did not become a blessing, but even so, your intentions to pray to the gods is known by all. That is more than enough. Brother, let us take our sister to the dormitory. Not yet, Charlotte. I still need to pass, I replied. After all my hard work, I couldn't bear to leave her now. I turned my attention to the professor, who then seemed to snap back to reality. I have observed your most heartfelt and sincerest word, Lady Rosamond. You pass, of course. I must now ask that you get some rest. Please do take care of yourself. I thank you. It was then that I noticed that many stunned eyes glued to me. It was hard not to be the center of attention when I was literally sparkling. Everyone, I apologize for disturbing class, I said, fighting back the urge to cry. I worked so hard to avoid this and did everything I could to prepare, but I still failed. Wilfred and Charlotte helped me up and escorted me out of the small hall. I still wanted to cry, and my body still felt uncomfortably hot. Lady Rosamond, Riarda said when she saw us, Wilfred, my boy, take Charlotte and return to class. I shall take care of things from here. She figured out everything from the state of my face stones, and she wasted no time in taking me back to the dormitory. We arrived to find that the second batch of face stones and magic tools had arrived from Ehrenfest. Filling them up relieved some of the heat inside of me, which felt nice. Riarda, what's this? I asked. A letter from Ob Ehrenfest, she replied. As well as sending me more face stones and magic tools, Sylvester had to set a date for his meeting with Hersher. Okay. I want to make it a little longer. Hersher's meeting with the Ob. Scoring a passing grade in whirling class had proven to be a hard-fought battle, but I had come out on top. Rather than feeling accomplished, however, I was terrified by how everyone had looked at me. Wilfred and Charlotte took me to a meeting room as soon as they returned from class themselves, whereupon I asked them to debrief me, speaking with fear. They both shared a sigh in response, then an expression unreadable. You contained the blessing, but were unable to keep the face stones on your body from shining, Charlotte said. All who saw the sight are surely convinced of your sainthood. Isn't that right, brother? Wilfred nodded. Yeah, it was so bright that I got distracted from my own whirl. You really stood out, Rosamond. It came as no surprise that people had been stunned, but it hadn't even crossed my mind that other students had stopped whirling themselves to stare at me. Just trying to suppress my blessings was hard enough. What did the others think? Not sure. Nobody was really willing to talk about it, Wilfred replied. Everyone seemed to shake themselves out of their stupors after you left, then returned to practicing. They are all Archduke candidates, so everyone is skilled at hiding their true thoughts and emotions, Charlotte added with a sigh. It will take some time before we learn what people thought and what manner of reports they gave to their obs. Since dedication world practice was attended only by Archduke candidates, not many had seen the incident, unlike during our music class with the archnobles. However, as every single person who had witnessed the scene was more or less near the very top of their respective duchies, we could not yet determine the repercussions. I see. In any case, we just received this letter from Ehrenfest that said presenting a board. Sylvester will be coming at dinner time 2 days from now to meet with Professor Hirscher. I sent an ordinance to her already. Wilfred and Charlotte exchanged worried glances. I see. Father is coming, Wilfred mumbled. I suppose it is important that we discuss what we have learned about divine protections before making that information public, Charlotte agreed. They both wore clouded expressions, doubtless because we were also going to find out the results of the purge. There was still some time before Sylvester was due to arrive, so we took everyone, the children of the former Veronica faction included, to our duchy's gathering spot. The students all collected as many ingredients as possible, then I regenerated the spot with a blessing. It was a gesture both to help with the Lord of Winterhunt and to indicate that things were still well in the dormitory. "Miladies," Riarda said to Charlotte and me, "we have received word from the guard at the teleportation circle. It is time." Charlotte and I gazed up at her. We were free to meet with Sylvester. I had finished my afternoon classes early, and Charlotte had already finished all of her written lessons, but this was happening much sooner than dinner. "I suppose a pre-meeting talk is necessary," I said. "Riarda, if we would prepare a meeting room." "One has already been prepared," Riarda replied. She had apparently made all the necessary arrangements while directing the younger apprentice attendants in the dormitory. I hadn't noticed since I had been reading in the common room all the time, and so we headed to the teleportation hall. 3 guard knights came out first and stood at attention while waiting for their lords to follow. "Mother is here too?" Charlotte cried out in shock. We had only been expecting Sylvester, but Florencia was suddenly standing before us. Her indigo eyes, which so closely resembled Charlotte's, focused on us both. Florencia pressed a hand on her cheek. "This discussion with Professor Hirscher is going to prove crucial for the future of our duchy. I must participate as well, you see." "I was busy with other things, so Florencia read all your reports this year," Sylvester added with a shrug. He had apparently been drowning in works ever since Matthias's warning had required the purge to be sped up, which was why Florencia had gone through our messages from the Royal Academy in his place. We went to the meeting room that Riarda had prepared and got ready for our pre-meeting. Our attendants poured us some tea, and as things started to settle down, Wilfred joined us. He had just finished his practical lesson. "Sorry for the wait, I'm here." "We have yet to begin," Wilfred, Florencia said. "As your mother, I am glad to hear that you have been working so hard." "I didn't expect you to be here too, Mother." "Everyone truly says the same thing," Florencia replied with a refined giggle. "You all sent highly critical reports so soon after your arrival at the Royal Academy, correct? That certainly made Sylvester and all the Knights Order very busy. Thus I took on the duty of reading all of your reports, and I must say I was truly astounded by what I discovered as they poured in day after day. On the first day of our 3rd year practical lessons, only those with connections to me had earned divine protections in spades. Those same divine protections had caused me to lose control of my mana. Then, the very next day, a blessing had shot out at me while I was playing the Hirschspiel. Hirscher had sent her a request for a meeting not long after, an unusual development in itself considering her long streak of saying there was absolutely nothing to report. And as a cherry on top of this already strange Sunday, this meeting was going to be about revealing a way to increase one's divine protections. After reading those reports, Florencia had immediately determined that this was not something she could deal with alone. To this end, she had consulted Sylvester Karstedt and Avara. Florencia had thanked her lucky stars upon learning about my plan to deal with my mana using the gathering spot on Earth Day. But then she had received my request for as many face stones as Ehrenfest could provide the very next day. She had apparently found the whole situation a real struggle to manage. Furthermore, the face stones were filled with mana and returned almost immediately, were they not? Florencia continued. I spent the afternoon asking for the Knight's Order to gather empty face stones, having my attendants clear my schedule to make time for meeting Hirscher, and getting my scholar to write letters. Then, after making those arrangements, Florencia had sat there worrying about how my whirling would go. Of course, she hadn't needed to wait that long. A report had soon arrived saying that while I had managed to prevent a blessing from shooting out, all of my face stones had started to shine and attracted just as much attention anyway. Hearing about all this from a more objective viewpoint, it certainly does sound like an incomprehensible mess. In any case, Rosamund, what do you think about publicizing what we know of the divine protections? Florencia asked. Revealing a portion of our knowledge sounds wise, for Professor Hirscher to have actually gotten involved and given direct advice. The situation surrounding Ehrenfest must be dire. She said that our continued rise to the duchy rankings has caused our reputation to plummet. The Archducal couple hardened their expressions, as did the scholars and attendants around them. Is it not important for top-ranking duchies to assist the bottom-ranking duchies? I asked. Every duchy is experiencing a mana shortage to some degree or another. So would it not be in our best interest to improve our relationship with them by teaching them how to get more divine protections and increasing their mana efficiency? Of course, any duchy that wished to make use of this mana would need to improve its relationship with its temple. If nobles had started to begrudgingly visiting temples for ceremonies, then I imagine that the temples would improve for the better. I have heard that Fullmetal has seen better at harvest ever since it copied us and started getting its Archduke candidates to go through its central districts, I continued. However, I don't believe that this knowledge spread much more than that, as they are hesitant to say that their nobles visit the temple. Rudiger had mentioned during the fellowship gathering that he was participating in temple ceremonies and filling his duchy's land with mana. But I doubted that he would ever admit it during a tea party or what have you. At the very least, such news hadn't reached my ears. Yeah, during our male socializing events, Lord Rudiger never once mentioned that he had gone to the temple, nor that he was grateful to Ehrenfest, Wilfried said. I too have attended tea parties with lesser and middle duchies, but not once has a Fullmetal noble mentioned their Archduke candidates participating in rituals, Charlotte added. That said, it did come up briefly during one of the familial tea parties that Lady Detlinde hosted. Sylvester exchanged a glance with Florencia and said, "The same goes for the Archduke conference. My sister Constance thanked us for it during a family dinner, but didn't say a word about going to the temple during the actual Archduke meetings. Fullmetal no doubt wishes to avoid any further suspicion from greater duchies now that it ranks among the lower middle duchies." Florencia lamented. That she then turned to Sylvester. That said, if my brother and your sister had only mentioned this, then they could have helped us to clear some of the poor rumors surrounding Ehrenfest. Fullmetal's archducal couple was Florencia's brother and Sylvester's sister, and those familial ties had a considerable impact on relations between the two duchies for better and worse. It was only natural that a bottom-ranking duchy would prioritize its own reputation above all else, exactly as Ehrenfest had done up until recently. Thus, I believe it best to publicize how to get more divine protections, in part to help clear the bad rumors around you, Sylvester. Of course, we won't reveal everything. I think that sticking with the more obvious, uncontroversial elements will suffice. Makes sense, Sylvester replied. I'll let you work out what that'll be then. Ehrenfest, Professor Herscher has arrived, announced a voice once we had finished discussing the major elements of the meeting. Herscher entered, took the seat across from Sylvester, and said, "It's been a long time, Ehrenfest." The air between them felt especially tense. "Indeed," Sylvester replied. "We don't tend to see each other at the Interduchy tournament." Florencia leaned forward with a smile, perhaps hoping to soften their harsh expressions. "Your request for this meeting came as such a boon to us, Professor Herscher. Due to the rules of the Royal Academy, we could not have involved ourselves in these matters otherwise." "Yeah, we appreciate it," Sylvester continued. "And on that note, I've been meaning to properly apologize to you face to face. How my mother treated you was unacceptable. I did not know the half of what was happening here before Ferdinand told me, and it makes me feel so pathetic." Herscher sighed and shook her head. "You have already apologized by letter, Lord Sylvester, and Alp should not be so quick to bow in front of others. I offered to provide financial support now that Ferdinand is no longer able, but you made it clear that you do not want help from Ehrenfest. Doesn't that mean you don't intend to forgive me?" Sylvester asked, wearing a rather pitiful expression. Herscher smiled and then shook her head again. "I can accept your apology, but not your financial support. My assistance extends only as far as concealing more problematic matters I am not helping with solutions, so I will make do with financing myself." Her gaze wandered to me. "Accepting money from you will only cause me more issues than I am willing to endure. In fact, I am offended that you would think me willing to help work for you after being left on my own for so long. Financing me is a long-term commitment, not something to be done only when you desire my services." Ooh. Through that small glance alone, Herscher was clearly marking me as someone who would cause a mountain of problems for her. Sylvester must have noticed this as he was looking at me as well. What about after Rosemine graduates, then? I may reconsider when the time comes. She changed her tune that fast? Professor Herscher, I explained, shouldn't you have acted all cool and said that your principles will never change or something? Oh? You should know how my principles by now, Lady Rosemine. All is for the sake of research, Herscher replied, an unmistakable glint in her purple eyes. I couldn't help but slump my shoulders. She really was set in her ways. Sylvester cackled and slapped me on the back. Can you blame her, Rosemine? You're somehow managing to cause bigger problems by the year. Wait, really? I thought things were staying about the same, I said. There was always daily reports, but I'd never even considered that the problems were getting worse. Wilfried stared at me in a daze, then Wilfried grabbed me by the shoulders. Rosemine, did you even think before saying that? Things seemed pretty bad in our first year, I'm sure, but nobody had to be called to the Royal Academy. In our second year, Uncle had to force his way in for a few days, and now, within a week of our third year, our dormitory supervisor has requested a meeting with the OB. Can't you see that the problems are getting bigger and bigger? He was almost pleading. His expression kind of made sense to me, or explanation kind of made sense to me, but at the same time, I had some disagreements. It's not like I'm causing problems because I want to, and the ones this year were completely out of my control. I got so many divine protections as a result of my being the High Bishop, and my blessing during music class was because my staff wouldn't control my mana anymore. As for what happened in whirling class, I stood out even more precisely because we all worked together to try and prevent any issues. I clenched my fist and shot up into the air. If you ask me, the real person to blame is whoever changed the school curriculum. Hersher rubbed her temples in a way that immediately brought Ferdinand to mind. This may be a private meeting, but you would do well not to openly criticize the king and his policies, she said. Wait, I'm struggling right now because of the king? It's his fault? Sylvester waved away my complaining. Rosemine, she told you to shut up. You do well to listen. Right, my apologies. I'll keep those kinds of criticisms to myself going forward. Still, though, you're such a jerk, Mr. King. At least nobody can read your thoughts. Oh, boy. Soon after Sylvester had apologized to Hersher and things had settled down, dinner began. A more detailed discussion would continue once we had all eaten. As the Archducal couple was here, we of the Archducal family were eating separately from the other students. Okay, what I'm about to say isn't a criticism of the king, but an honest request, I said, looking up at Hersher after ensuring that I wouldn't be misunderstood. Experiencing a great change in the flow of one's mana and mana efficiency after obtaining a staff causes severe problems when it comes to mana control. I believe the students should obtain their staffs and divine protections right before their graduation, as it used to be. You were the first person to experience such problems, so it would take quite some time before any such changes are made, Hersher replied. She then went on to describe the benefits of obtaining one staff early. Students without one would need to prepare so many magic tools for class, and the mana costs were much higher as well. As staffs greatly improved one's mana efficiency and expanded what one could do, they offered for even those who were still underage to assist their duchy. It had been tremendously beneficial back when the number of nobles plummeted following the Civil War. In particular, it had been important when former blue priests and shrine maidens had attended the academy under special circumstances. That said, Hersher continued, these pros will not outweigh the cons forever. Herrenfest is changing through its new mana compression method, and students will soon obtain more divine protections through their deeds and prayers. I am confident that more and more students will struggle as a result of obtaining their staffs before the growth period ends. In that regard, Roderick is going to be our greatest concern. Giving his name to me had resulted in him becoming omni-elemental, and he was naturally still in his growth period. It was very likely that his mana growth would stop his current staff from being able to do his job properly. If we allow students to reach their end of their growth period and receive their divine protections from more subordinate gods first, then the staff they receive will surely be of a much higher quality, and most importantly, one can only obtain a staff once. As such, students who end up with ones poorly suited to their final mana capacity will experience problems for life. As it stood, there are still records of the old curriculum, and professors who knew how to teach things the old way, but as time passed and new generations of professors replaced the old, this kind of information could easily be lost. A time would eventually come when we wouldn't be able to go back to how things were even if we wanted to. I am aware that brewing can be done without a staff. I once did it under Ferdinand's supervision before obtaining mine. But not Wolfried, Charlotte, or even my scholars know how, I said. Naturally, this means the means to create magic tools necessary for brewing are being forgotten more with each passing day. I view this as a significant problem. Hersher paused for a moment and then said, I shall convey something to that effect to the king. As our discussion about my suggestion, which definitely wasn't criticism, came to an end, so too did our meal. Now we were going to resume our meeting. Most of our time would no doubt be spent going over Ehrenfest's current situation and discussing the publicizing of our findings about obtaining more divine protections. Hersher knew a great deal about Ehrenfest's reputation in the Royal Academy and the sovereignty, and she showed no interest in mincing her words. As we know, the war was a long and violent one. Those who won and those who lost all came away with very deep wounds. In the midst of all this tragedy, Ehrenfest might as well not have suffered at all, as it comes to no surprise that others feel inclined to look upon it more harshly. From our perspective, we were struggling more than enough as a result of the sovereignty's demands. Even if we wanted to complain, the other duchies surely had things much worse. I would like Ehrenfest to prioritize improving its relationship with other duchies above all else, but I have one concern in that regard, Hersher noted. What's that? Sylvester asked. The Sovereign Knight Commander seems to have quite the bone to pick with Ferdinand, Hersher said with a worried sigh. The fact that she had specifically said Ferdinand rather than Ehrenfest earned her many a dubious look. Have Ferdinand and the Sovereign Knight Commander even met? I decided to keep my mouth shut. Sylvester didn't know that Ferdinand was a seat of Adalgisa, and he knew that the Sovereign Knight Commander from back in those days. Hersher probably didn't know either, considering that she shook her head in response. I do not know where his animosity comes from, she said. Many probe me about Ehrenfest as a whole, whether it be about our trends, expanding our business lots, the secrets to our improved grades, or the truth to various rumors surrounding the duchy. But the Knight Commander alone asked about Ferdinand and Lady Rosamund in particular. You should take great care with him. I recalled our meeting with the Knight Commander in the library. He had called Ferdinand a seat of Adalgisa, and it had probably been during that brief encounter that he had developed the suspicion that had spurred him to advise the king to separate Ferdinand from Ehrenfest. Since then, he had gotten his wife to infiltrate the Royal Academy as a librarian to spy on me more. In short, we are surrounded by enemies, so I would advise that we reveal the method for obtaining more divine protections and prove ourselves useful to society. Just so you know, this is something that Prince Anastasius indicated we should do as well. Given our duchy's current rank, we were supposed to be socializing as a top-ranking duchy, but we were still acting like a bottom-ranking one. It seems that Ehrenfest is one of only a few duchies that offers prayers during temple rituals and mana replenishment for the Foundation, Hersher continued. Our findings are well suited for Lady Rosamund, the High Bishop, and if they are handled well, then we can expect Ehrenfest's reputation to improve dramatically overnight. I sighed in relief, but that only made Hersher harden her expression. However, she went on, I do not believe that other duchies will trust Ehrenfest in its current state. That's why I would recommend another approach. We have already confirmed that so many Dunkelfelder students receive Ungrif's divine protection due to their custom of praying to him. And the dormitory supervisor, Roffin, is up to date on these matters. Perhaps you could publish this as a joint research. Professor Hersher, we thank you for all your advice, Sylvester said. Be cautious, though, else Dunkelfelder might claim all of your research as his own. We should also be wary of swallowing the words of a sovereign noble such as myself so easily. You are an but not a student. Hersher concluded, sounding so much like a professor. Sylvester gave a half smile. Now, what kind of brother and father would I be to not trust the person who protected Ferdinand for so long, and is now protecting Rosamund too? Hersher was stunned for a moment. Then she relaxed into her chair and returned a small smile. You are as soft as ever, I see. I'm glad that even so long after your graduation, you are still the same man on the inside. Lady Florencia, do look out for Lord Sylvester. He has been unpredictable and full of energy ever since he was young. She then began to regale us with stories of Sylvester's student days, though she was cut short when the Archdeacon questioned cried out, Stop! Stop! They really were behaving like a professor and her student, which made Wilfred and Charlotte cover their mouths as they tried to suppress their laughter. Professor Hersher, Sylvester has his hands full dealing with children even more unpredictable than he, Florencia said. I am sure that he understands your struggles a tad more now. Florencia, was all that Sylvester could manage in response. You are as weak to Lady Florencia as ever, Hersher said, allowing her amusement to show for a moment before returning to a more serious expression. Lady Rosamund has already demonstrated her value to the Archduke candidates of other duchies, having shown how many divine protections she has obtained, and their harmonic capacity is large enough for her to trivially give blessings. The likelihood of Lord Wilfrid being targeted has increased dramatically. After all, Lady Rosamund will once again be available if she loses her fiancé. None of us had expected the conversation to take such a turn. We all gulped and turned to Wilfrid, who merely shrugged and smiled in the face of our concerns. I'll be fine, he said, the picture of confidence. Uncle warned me about that too, and gave me some charms so I can keep myself safe at least. Rosamund received a bunch from him too, so she should be fine as well. Florencia put her head in her hands. Wilfrid, only when you can protect your fiancé through your own efforts can you be considered a man. Hersher nodded in agreement, her head also in her hand. She looked at Sylvester. It is an ob's duty to protect the treasure of their duchy. I look forward to seeing what you can do, Lord Sylvester. Okay, yeah, I'll get to work on everything, and I'll see you guys in the next one.